the quarterback musical chairs that I think could take place during the upcoming NFL offseason. And buried beneath Trevor Lawrence is a generational prospect and Justin Fields is a guy a lot of people like. The stuff I really liked in the piece, Jeremy, that I'd love you to pick up here is some of the not so usual suspect teams that you expect to potentially be trying to find a new quarterback. I'd love you to run through some of those.
Yeah, Greeny, great to be with you. And just talking to people around the league, there's a sense that a third of the league, maybe 10 to 12 teams, will at least dig in, do a lot of homework on possibly drafting a quarterback pretty high because you have 5 or 6 good ones that could go in the first few rounds. I start with Carolina. They're a team that has Teddy Bridgewater as really a true bridge quarterback. He's got a couple years left on his contract, but I'm told they really like this quarterback class. They could groom a guy behind Bridgewater. San Francisco, a lot of coaches I talk to say, look, it's time for Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive minds in the game, to go get an athletic running quarterback that you can throw with, maybe like a Josh Allen with a little more accuracy. Detroit eventually moving on from Matthew Stafford, potentially, because maybe they've hit a ceiling there and his contract you can get out of. Las Vegas with John Gruden. He's known in NFL circles that he's always going to be lurking and looking around, admiring quarterbacks far and wide, despite the play of Derek Carr. So those are even just a few of a long list.
Absolutely. And again, there are details on this in the piece, and most of it stems from the fact that this draft is about more than just the 2 at the top that everybody knows. But let's talk about the one at the very top. Are there any questions amongst the people you talk to about Trevor Lawrence?
Really only a little bit of accuracy and decision-making, but that's it. I mean, you ask execs around the league to pick this guy apart, and they say, well, there's really not much here. He's going to be fine. He's game ready. I mean, it was almost shocking to me. There wasn't really a lot of flaws to uncover where, Justin Fields, who has bridged the gap at that second spot. And some people think the gap is not that far from Lawrence. Some think it's very big. But with him, there are some criticisms about his accuracy at least a year ago. He seemed to clean that up this year. There's maybe some whispers of a little entitlement coming out of Georgia when he transferred, although Ohio State speaks glowingly of him now to scouts and execs. So it seems that he's kind of quelled those issues. But with Lawrence, you hear that term clean prospect all the time, but he really is that. Nobody really has any red flags on this guy right now.
Now, Fields is a guy, the stat on him that is incredible. He has thrown as many touchdowns this season as he has incompletions. He has 11 touchdown passes and 11 incompletions. And then we look at the top of the draft. Is the expectation, we all know who is probably going to be picking at number 1. You said something on TV this morning about the possibility that some people see of Trevor Lawrence going back to school for another year, which he could. Tell me what you heard about that.
Well, I spoke to at least one high-ranking exec that brought that up. That's like, hey, we're hearing that might be a possibility. I think at the end of the day, most expect him to leave. But there is precedent. We've seen it with the Mannings who decided to stay back. Andrew Luck decided to go back to school after his redshirt sophomore year. A little bit of a different situation, but, it can happen if the player, just wants to weigh his options. And sometimes it can have to do with the team, as we've seen. There were whispers of Joe Burrow not wanting to go to Cincinnati. Those were pretty strong last offseason. I think some of those were warranted. Eventually they came to a common ground, and he's a Bengal. And so, there could be some of that in play. I think at the end of the day, he will declare for the draft. But, the Jets, before they do anything with Sam Darnold potentially trading him, they need to ensure that Lawrence is on the same page with them and they feel good about him being a Jet, and that's reciprocated. This
is something I have been talking about for weeks now, and it is definitely something that bears watching. And again, Jeremy's piece definitely bears reading up on ESPN.com right now. The quarterback musical chairs. We could see a third of the league getting in on quarterback moves during this offseason. Jeremy, thank you. Great to see you this morning. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much, Greeny. Appreciate it.
That's Jeremy Fowler on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Pennzoil synthetic motor oils are made from natural gas, giving you unbeatable engine protection. The proof is in the Pennzoil, based on Sequence 4A wear test using SAE 5W30. Now, I'm not sitting here trying to downplay how great a prospect Trevor Lawrence is. Under no circumstances. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves the kid. Everybody loves the character. Everybody loves the talent. There's nothing about him that people don't love, and I'm not here to tell you otherwise. All I'm saying is that when I watched them play last year in the college football playoff against Ohio State, I didn't watch that game and think, ooh, the kid at Clemson is definitely the best quarterback in this game. Now, he ran well that night when his team needed him to because he wasn't throwing the ball against that really good defense. Ohio State is known as DBU. They always have great defensive backs. So he was struggling throwing the ball. And so he ran it. He proved he can run it better than you might have realized at his size. But he wasn't definitively the best quarterback on the field that night, and he certainly wasn't in the championship game against LSU, against Joe Burrow, who had a monster night and wound up being the number one pick in this past year's draft. So I just keep going back to those. Now, the people who make a living analyzing these guys, to a man, to a woman, to a vote, every single one of them says, no, Lawrence is the guy. He's a generational prospect. He's one of one. He's the best we've seen in a decade, maybe longer. He's going to go number one. Of that, I have no question. We'll see what winds up happening. And, of course, if he goes to the team I root for, I will root for him like crazy. But if it were me, I like watching that Justin Fields play. I'll tell you that. And the Big Ten gets the spotlight this weekend. Big games, Ohio State, Indiana, Northwestern, Wisconsin. Big games this weekend, and we will learn a little more about these kids. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.